Well, I am officially back. And since I was a bit out of the loop for the last month, a lot of stuff has happened since I was gone. And one of the things that I found rather interesting is a certain TV show that got revived. And today I'm going to be looking at the episode, which happens to be the first of this revival, that's gotten a lot of people talking about this show. That show being Roseanne. No, I'm gonna be upfront with you. I was actually never that big of a fan of the original Roseanne show. Maybe it's just me. I didn't hate it per se, I just didn't watch it a lot. I was more interested in shows like Full House and Family Matters from time to time. But one thing I did notice was a lot of people were talking about the Roseanne revival, just like a lot of other shows like Will and Grace, which another show I was never really into all that much. And because mainly I wasn't that into it. No, it's not because of that. It's because it was a very loud show. Although I will admit, Harry Connick Jr. was pretty good on it, because he's a very talented man. But the one thing I have been paying attention to a little bit is that apparently Roseanne Barr is one of those rare liberals who actually voted for Trump. And while she probably has some disagreements with him, I do myself, I find it refreshing that for once there's a left-leaning celebrity who's actually trying to be level-headed about the situation and not just going on constant anti-Trump rhetoric. I mean, her and John Goodman on Jimmy Fallon, that is like one of the few times I actually laughed at Jimmy Fallon.
Are you over again?
You want pants? You want pants for the friggin' president?
No, I don't want him
then
either.
zip that.
So as for the episode itself, what do I personally think? From the perspective of someone who was never the world's biggest fan of Roseanne, well, it basically does what a good revival of a show should do, in that it reintroduces the characters years later, sets up some things that have happened over that time frame. One thing I slightly remember from the end of Roseanne was it was implied that John Goodman's character, Dan, died. But they completely skipped that entirely. They even make a couple of jokes out of it.
What happened?
I thought you were dead.
Sleeping.
This would have sold like hotcakes if only you hadn't killed off the most interesting character. He was a gentle giant.
One of the big things, one of the major selling points of this episode when it was first coming out was that it was going to tackle family issues when some people in the family voted for Trump and others voted for Hillary.
Why don't you get that fixed with the new health care all you suckers got promised?
It works good enough to kick your ass, snowflake.
There you go. All you people go straight to the violence. Every one of you wrapping yourselves up in the flag and clinging to your guns.
Yeah. First, let's say grace. Jackie, would you like to take a knee? Most of all, Lord, thank you for making America great again. Mom, no!
It's okay, darling.
And so a lot of people had their own special interpretations as to what they thought this episode was trying to be. Some people thought it was pro-Trump propaganda and trying to smear campaign the left. Some people who were more partisan felt it was just a little too needlessly political. And so here's what I personally interpreted the episode to be. I feel like this episode was trying to make a statement on not just the country, but also how relationships and families have become so divided when it comes to the 2016 election. I mean, sure, everybody, myself included, have thoughts on Hillary and Trump. We all have thoughts about them, but what we shouldn't let it do is divide. I mean, when you really break it down, despite how extreme both of these sides may appear, it really is no different than any of the other elections that happened previously. It's just that we as a society put this election on a pedestal and said that it was the most important of all the elections.
This election matters more than all the others. It's like we're not sensing a pattern here. This happens every election season.
And now we've caused the results of said election to divide us not only as a country, but as families, to the point where simple family get-together holidays like Easter Christmas, Thanksgiving, what have you, have become insanely divided to the point where some people just don't want to interact with any of their other family members just because of who they voted for, whether they're left-wing or right-wing.
And in real life, it's like everybody's family is pissed off at each other for one thing or the other.
And that's what I feel like this episode was trying to make a statement on, because Roseanne is very pro-Trump and her sister Jackie is very pro-Hillary.
And then I go into the booth and I voted for Jill Stein.
Who's Jill Stein?
The best thing about this episode is that in the end, Jackie and Roseanne finally make up and finally admit that they were both being incredibly selfish and ignorant.
And I never said you were stupid. Well, I didn't mean it.
And I guess I didn't mean to imply that you're some right-wing jackass.
I'm sorry. I forgive you.
I know how hard that was for you.
Amongst all the late night talk show hosts and all the news outlets and all this kind of stuff, it is refreshing to see a show actually try to be honest and just tell us, despite our differences and our politics, we should at least try to understand each other. And again, I was never the world's biggest fan of Roseanne, and yet I feel like this episode kind of shows one of the strengths that Roseanne, as a series, whether the new one or the original back in the late 80s, early 90s, had going for it. One of its strengths was that it was honest. It was about a working class family that were always hitting hard times, were always, constantly fighting. It was actually fairly realistic for a sitcom, versus what some people may say about shows like Full House, where they say that it's just a little too phony for its own good. And in the spirit of this episode, all bow our heads and let's do a quick prayer. Lord, I just want to say, thank you for making Roseanne great again.